Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced a unilateral Easter truce in the war in Ukraine, according to the Kremlin. In televised remarks on Saturday, Putin said that from 6 p.m. local time to midnight Sunday, Russian forces would observe a ceasefire for humanitarian purposes. He added that he hoped Ukraine would follow suit and that Kyiv's response would demonstrate its readiness for a peaceful resolution.
Руководствуясь гуманитарными соображениями, сегодня с 18:00 часов до 00 часов с воскресенья на понедельник российская сторона объявляет пасхальное перемирие. Приказываю на этот период остановить все боевые действия. Исходим из того, что украинская сторона последует нашему примеру. При этом наши войска должны быть готовы к отражению возможных нарушений перемирия и провокаций со стороны противника, любых его агрессивных действий. Мы знаем, киевский режим более 100 раз, как вы мне и докладывали, нарушал договоренности о ненанесении ударов по энергетической инфраструктуре. Поэтому прошу быть крайне внимательными и собранными, быть готовыми к немедленному ответу в полном объеме. Наше решение о пасхальном перемирии покажет, насколько искренней является готовность киевского режима и его желание, да и способность соблюдать договоренности, участвовать в процессе мирных переговоров, направленных на устранение первопричин украинского кризиса.
The Russian Defense Ministry confirmed that the truce would be respected by Russian forces, provided that Ukraine also honors it. Putin instructed the Russian military to prepare for any potential violations of the truce by Ukrainian forces. So far, Ukraine has not responded publicly to the announcement. Last month, Putin had agreed to suspend strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure for 30 days following talks with US President Donald Trump. However, both sides have since reported violation of their temporary pause. While Russia has not accepted a broader US-backed 30-day ceasefire, Putin said Moscow remains open to negotiations and welcomed international efforts by the US, China, and others to seek a fair settlement. Meanwhile, a Russian court has sentenced 19-year-old activist Daria 𝐒𝐭𝐳𝐬 to 2 years and 8 months in prison for protesting against the war in Ukraine. 𝐒𝐭𝐳𝐬 was found guilty of repeatedly discrediting the Russian army. The charges stem from her public protests using graffiti and poetry and for speaking to an independent media outlet. In 2022, at the age of 17, she spray-painted anti-war messages near the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, referencing the destruction of the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. On the war's second anniversary, she taped a poem by Ukrainian national poet Taras Shevchenko to his statue in a St. Petersburg park. 𝐒𝐭𝐳𝐬 called the case one big fabrication and said the truth is never guilty. Human rights group Amnesty International called for her immediate release, saying her sentence shows how far Russian authorities are willing to go to silence peaceful opposition. 𝐒𝐭𝐳𝐬 is one of more than 230 people currently imprisoned in Russia for anti-war views, according to a memorial, a Nobel Prize-winning human rights group. Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister 𝐒𝐭𝐲 Dar visited Kabul in a bid to reset ties with Afghanistan. In high-level meetings with Afghan officials, both sides agreed not to allow their soil to be used for attacks against one another. Dar also announced a new transit tracking system to be introduced by June to ease bilateral trade and called for joint projects to address shared challenges. The visit comes at a tense time with recent border clashes and refugees issues straining relations.
जो ट्रैक एंड ट्रेस सिस्टम है जिससे अफगानिस्तान की ट्रांजिट गुड्स की जो है वो यानी बड़ी तेज़ी आ सकती है और उसमें बहुत ही दोनों तरफ जो हैं उसको फ़ायदा उनको होगा, उसकी एक डेडलाइन अब आज तय हो गई है कि 30 जून 2025 को ये ट्रांजिट ट्रैक एंड ट्रेस सिस्टम जो है ऑपरेशनल हो जाएगा. 30 जून 2025 को.
Back home, the government is cracking down on violent protests. Minister of State for Interior Talal Chaudhary strongly condemned recent attacks on international fast food outlets in Sindh and Punjab. The attacks linked to anger over Israeli actions in Gaza left one worker dead in Sheikhpura. Over 140 people have been arrested, and authorities say the businesses targeted are locally owned and vital to the economy. Since the Prime Minister's directive for terror security, no fresh attacks have occurred.
एक हफ्ता पहले से पाकिस्तान में एक मारूफ बैरून मुल्क से जो एक फ्रेंचाइज है फास्ट फूड चेन, उस पर हमले किए गए. मैं चंद हकायक आपके सामने रखना चाहूँगा. सबसे पहली बात तो यह है कि पाकिस्तान और रियासत की ये जिम्मेदारी है कि कोई भी पाकिस्तानी कारोबारी हो या बाहर से पाकिस्तान में जिसने इन्वेस्टमेंट की हो उसके जानो माल का तहफ़्फ़ुज़ रियासत का फ़र्ज़ है और रियासत अपने इस फ़र्ज़ से गाफिल नहीं है। बहुत ही अफसोस के साथ ये कहना पड़ता है कि हम हमेशा ये कहते हैं कि बैरूने मुमालिक से, मगरबी मुमालिक से पाकिस्तान और बहुत सारी इस्लामिक वर्ल्ड पर ऐसे इल्ज़ामात और ऐसी बातें की जाती हैं जिसका हकीकत से या इस्लाम से, हमारे दीन से कोई ताल्लुक नहीं होता।
In Karachi, religiously motivated violence claimed another life. An Ahmadi man, like 𝐒𝐭𝐬𝐬, was lynched by a mob in Sadr, reportedly linked to the Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan. CCTV footage led police to 6 suspects, including an elected TLP-backed official. The Human Rights Commission of Pakistan has called this a breakdown of law and order and demanded swift arrest and prosecution. Chima was also a witness in a previous vandalism case involving the same suspects. Meanwhile, supply chains are slowly getting back on track. Good transporters ended their 4-day nationwide strike after reaching a deal with Karachi authorities. The protest was sparked by new vehicle fitness checks introduced after a rise in fatal road accidents involving dumpers and tankers. Authorities have agreed to phase in the new rules over 6 months and will release most impounded vehicles. Transporters, in return, have promised full compliance and proposed new safety measures like dedicated lanes and shifting warehouses to the city outskirts. In more economic news, Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb is headed abroad, leading Pakistan's delegation to the IMF and World Bank spring meetings in Washington. He is set to meet with international financial institutions, global ratings agencies, and top officials from countries including China and the UK and the US. On the agenda, climate finance, debt restructuring, and Pakistan's concerns over proposed 29% US tariffs on its exports. Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 92 Palestinians in Gaza over the past 2 days, according to the territory's health ministry. The attacks, which took place between April 17 and 19, also left over 219 people injured, with dozens still trapped under rubble or unreached by rescuers. Among the casualties were at least 15 children, reportedly killed during an overnight air raid on tents in 𝐒𝐭𝐲𝐬. A separatist strike in Rafah claimed the lives of a mother, her daughter, and 2 others. The escalation comes as Israel continues its 6-week blockade on aid and demands that Hamas disarm before any ceasefire. Hamas has rejected the terms, insisting on a full Israeli withdrawal and permanent end to the war in exchange for releasing remaining hostages. Since March 18, Israel has intensified its military campaign, and since March 2nd, it has barred the city of food and fuel, defying an international court of justice in order to allow humanitarian access. Aid agencies warn that food supplies are dwindling, with the signs of malnutrition and famine now emerging across the strip. The death toll in Gaza has reached 51,065, with over 116,500 people wounded.